Now, there is a concern over the rise of child murders in the country. Some of the murder cases against children, now perpetrators have been apprehended and have been heard into a court of law. Now, these gruesome stories continue to make headlines. For more on this now, we are joined by Patric Solomons, who is the director of Molo Songololo. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Solomons. So, these tragic killings are becoming heartbreakingly common in the country. What do you believe are the root causes driving this worrying surge in violence against children, particularly in gang-affected communities like Easter River and West Bank?
Well, good morning to you and to your viewers. Yes, it is quite shocking and sad and very upsetting when we hear about children being killed, but children being killed in such a violent kind of way. And it's unfortunate that most of the children affected in this kind of way are mainly poor children. And they are largely also captured in communities where there's very high levels of aggression against them, of violence against them, and also gang-related violence and violence because of interpersonal sort of feuds between men and women, community members. And unfortunately, we've also recently heard about a stray bullet that killed a child, a very young child for that matter. So it is very, very concerning. The reasons for all this is that South Africa is a violent country. We are very, very violent. We settle our scores through violence. And unfortunately, also children themselves are not spared. So we don't settle any sort of disagreements and conflict in a peaceful manner. So we've seen this in the gang culture, for example. It's about territory. If you're going to mess with me, I'm going to mess with you. If you're going to do this to me, I'm going to hit your family. And then, of course, there's like we've also heard now about this recent report, a lot of children also get caught up in this violence. So it's not only gunshots, it's also stabbings, it's also being run over by a car. There's multiple ways in which children are being victimized in such a violent kind of way. How do we solve all this? I think that's always been, for many, many years, one of the main concerns that we have. From Molo Songololo's side, we work within communities. We see these things happen. Our colleagues get affected by this, because when there are these risks, we can't send them into certain roads, certain areas. We have to make sure that they're protected. And also the clients and the children that we work with, the children in schools, for example, they're not safe at school, they're not safe at home, they're not safe in public. So it is a very difficult life to navigate for our children in these sort of risk communities and where there's high levels of violence taking place. We still, however, do believe that we need to invest in prevention work. We need to make sure that we safeguard children at all levels, in the homes, at school, in public, when children are out and about with people that they're supposed to trust. A large volume of children get killed by people who are supposed to protect and care for them as well. And so we've seen that in some cases where sort of stress levels are very high, people are in a dysfunctional living lived life, that they often hit out at children, and children become the punching bag. And sometimes it's not a willful killing, but it is because of the actions of violence against children, the assault against children, and sometimes it's also because of neglect. Children are being neglected, and that can also cause their death. So prevention is very important for us. So we need to invest in prevention work, make sure that children's spaces are safe, children's homes are safe. So we must make sure that home visits are important, that the social workers, the church leaders, community workers can go and visit and see the safety of children in their homes and what are the risks at homes. On the streets, we've seen communities respond with the sort of safe trains, the walking bus, for example. Those are all things that people are doing to prevent these things. And the other level, of course, is that we need to begin to make sure that we can improve people's livelihoods, because the lack of funds and resources and jobs and economic well-being is a major stress for people. So people often turn to criminal activities to do that. And of course, that
Mr. Solomons,
of
I'm gonna ask that I come in there, because you've actually said so much that weaves into the next question that I wanted us to also touch on, and this is the question on some of those socio-economic issues that we're seeing in our communities. But also, previously we'd always thought that raising children is not just an individual's effort. You'd say that it takes a village to raise a child. And many have now said that there's been a shift in our communities where we're seeing everybody just looking out for themselves, where we no longer have those elements of Ubuntu within our communities. Would you agree with this? And what would you say can be attributed to this shift that we are now seeing within our communities that actually puts our children in danger?
Yes and no. There's still a lot of caring, a lot of parents, a lot of educators, a lot of police really taking the job very seriously, and they go the extra mile to make sure that children are safe. We see it every day in the work that we do in communities like Delft, which is a very high murder rate, for example. And so we see that as well, where people are really going the extra mile. Community members get mobilized to safeguard children. And within that same situation, you will also have parents who just don't care. Parents who are so frustrated, who are linked to who are taking drugs, who are alcoholics, who are linked to gangs, for example, and they just don't care. We know of children who are living in very high risk homes, for example. We have situations where some teachers also don't care, but the majority of people do care. And it's most unfortunate when these things happen that we of course are all shocked and stuff, right? But we need to encourage people to get involved in local community projects and programs to support them, because we have situations where in areas, because they're overpopulated, there's high levels of violence, that the child protection services don't go into those areas, that the police don't go into those areas because they believe it's dangerous. So we need to mobilize parents, educate them, train them, community members, and then we need to make sure that violence and those who perpetrate violence, right, that they won't get the upper hand. We need to mobilize. And of course, a big help will be if those at the highest level, from the president to all politicians, all political parties, those in leadership positions in the churches and in our cultural groupings, all over, they need to speak loud and clear. They need to show by example that they will not tolerate violence against children. And if they do that, they will begin to make sure that our policies do work. That means we need to make sure that in practice, we make sure that our child protection services do function and do operate. It is still found that some police stations don't have enough transport. So when they get called out to an emergency, they can't get there. It is still found that when children do report, they don't get their help immediately. And so those things are problematic. And I think our leaders at every level can do a better job to mobilize community and support communities who are turning things around, to support those parents who are standing, who go and protest, who go and mobilize, who go to the school, who do the walking buses. Those people need to get more and more support. We need to also look at where is the money going, because the money don't filter, the money for these projects don't often filter effectively to that road, to that school, to that community that need the prevention work, that need the early intervention support services. And that is what we also need to address and to fix in South Africa. It is possible if we all just pull together.
And I want us to zone it back now to some of those communities where we've seen gang violence escalate, in cases like 12-year-old Kaylee Amber Koopman's case. Now, these children are often bystanders. So how do we start to begin to protect our children from being collateral damage in gang turf wars, especially when you take that and you balance it off with what you've just said now, to say that there are some community members who raise their hands to say they want to fight crime within their communities, communities, the likes of the CPF, for instance, whom on many occasions are way in over their heads because, first of all, they don't have the right resources to be fighting crime within their communities. Just how do we empower such communities?
I think we need to mobilize the community, and therefore the community itself have responsibility, and we need to take on those in positions of power to change things. So we need to address the gang violence, for example. The availability of gangs is so easily available. We need to make sure that the police can do their work. The police need to be capacitated. We need to end corruption within the police. It's a very important thing that we need to do. Even at station level. So we need to make interventions at all levels. It's not only just one aspect. Child safety is not just about that gun, that shot, and that child got killed by a stray bullet. There's a whole range of things that happen that go wrong for why that happens. Therefore, we need to address it in a more holistic way. And to ensure that safety is for children is a priority for everybody. And I think that will be important. So in a case like that with gang violence, we need to address the criminality of that, of course, so the police and the NPA, all that involved, but also the community needs to begin to say no. It's unfortunate, though, that gangs and gang violence is embedded within community. The gangs are made up of families, community members, so they're part of the community, and therefore the community will have to turn things around. The community will have to begin to say no to that, the way in which these gangs operate, work, and become a danger to their children. So that is where we need to put the efforts in, because it's not only a police and a prosecutorial and investigation process that needs to happen, it's also a community-led initiative that needs to happen. And we've seen this. For example, we've seen this by examples of PAGET, for example, in some communities where PAGET was working very well. They did reduce violence and crimes in those communities. So it is people's organizations, local communities, parents, families, community members. Even if you don't have a child, you should be there in the forefront to protect, because children's safety can also improve your safety as an adult who do not have a child. So it's everybody's business. Everybody have to get involved and make sure that our children are safe.
All right, Patric Solomons, I must thank you so much for your insights. And he is the director at Molo Songololo, joining us there for that important conversation. Thanks very much indeed for your time on the program.